What's good, everybody? Welcome in for another episode of the Red Friday live chat. Haven't done one of these in a couple of weeks, so thought today would be the best day to get back into it. Of course, with OTAs coming up, and this has been a very busy week for the Chiefs off the field. Uh, Maybe not for the best reasons, but yeah. We're here to discuss it nonetheless. A lot of things to get into, of course. I want to talk a little bit more about the Kansas City Chiefs 2024 schedule because there are a lot of people talking about how difficult the schedule is. Statistically, it's not really one of the toughest schedules in the NFL, but I guess in terms of the way the schedule was set up, who you're going to play when, some of the games that you're going to be playing in short periods of times at different times in the schedule kind of make it a little tough for the Chiefs. And then I think they have like 3 games in 11 days, something along those lines late in the season. A lot of people find that as a negative. And I can certainly see the challenge in that, but I also think there is a little bit of a positive with that. So I want to get into that later on as well. I also want to touch on some of the Harrison Butker reactions out there. You're starting to see, I mean, there are people who are still continuing to express their thoughts on this, but you're starting to see some very neutral, sane reactions to this. That's kind of how I've been this entire time about this whole thing. If you guys listen to the podcast on Wednesday, you guys know that. If you follow me on X, you've heard some of my thoughts on that as well. And I'd like to think I gave, a lot of rational, right in the middle thoughts on this whole thing. It's funny. I'll get some comments from people. Oh, you're a woke liberal, or you're a MAGA cult member. It's like, man, you guys need to decide which one I am. One day I'm for one side, one day I'm for the other side. I know Joe Rogan said he gets accused of this too sometimes, which is a really good thing, because then if you're being accused of playing both sides, I guess, for lack of a better term, I mean, it just shows that you really are, down in the middle neutral. I could never find myself for one side or the other, but neither here nor there. The Butker thing has gotten to a very interesting point now. It's going to fade away. I responded to a comment on Facebook a few minutes ago. Somebody said that they just want this topic to go away. Well, it's going to fade away this weekend, because all of the big time, commentators on TV and on the radio, their programs are not going to take place over the weekend. So they're going to, enjoy the weekend just like a lot of other Americans. A lot of times, like, especially like the big radio shows, national shows like Sirius XM, a lot of those are usually they're running, they have reruns on the weekend. So you don't really get a lot of new content from national talk radio stations. So this topic is going to kind of fade away this weekend, but the Chiefs do have OTAs next week, starting on May the 20th. I believe that's a Monday. So this topic is going to come back in a few days, whether you like it or not. That's just kind of the way things are, because everyone wants to hear from Harrison Butker. Everyone wants to hear from Andy Reid. Andy Reid's going to be hit with a lot of questions. Rashee Rice, because we've yet to hear from Andy on the second incident. Not that he's going to say much, but I'm sure the media is going to want to hear from him, say something about it in some capacity. They're definitely going to ask him about the Harrison Butker commencement speech. They're also going to ask him about Morris and Godrick getting arrested, which we learned about it this evening, but it was last night in good old Johnson County, of all places. Yes, good old Johnson County. Yeah. I mean, listen, it's not a big deal. Just freaking weed at the end of the day. But it does kind of get to a point where it's like, okay, the amount of incidents off the field are really adding up. Off the field legal troubles, that is. So that's just kind of how I feel about that. Again, I want to be very clear. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Like, unless they were behind the wheel driving, that's when it would be a big deal. And I know that is kind of in question with the Rashee Rice racing incident in Dallas. But if they were just at home, Super Bowl offseason team bonding, who gives a damn? It's not the worst thing in the world. So we'll get into that later on. Bob says the attorney general and the mayor are having some discussions on the topic. You mean like on X? I saw the attorney general was very upset because of that tweet that the city put out there. And I'm not quite sure what the intent was with that joke. That joke completely missed with me. And they put out they deleted the tweet. They had a follow-up saying sincere it was like the worst written English I've ever seen from a government official account. So, I mean, that's a topic for another time. But they basically said that it was an error. How is that an error? How do you make a joke about what city Harrison Butker lives in and then call it an error? How does that make sense? Clearly, I mean, listen, my guess is somebody like maybe a social media intern or whoever runs that account, they were going to go publish that joke on their own social media, but they didn't realize that they were logged in on the Kansas City Twitter account. That's actually happened to me a couple of times. I shared, so funny story. I actually shared on my personal Facebook years ago about how Donald Trump did not approve of the coverage Fox News had. And several hours later, I go to see, if I have any comments on that. I'm like, it's not even on there. I could have sworn I shared it. And then an hour later, this is back when the Facebook page was not even close to as big as it is now, but I go to my Facebook page, this page, which a lot of you guys are watching from, and I'm like, oh shit, I accidentally shared it on my public page. So I can believe if something like that happened, because that's happened to me before. But again, it's just like, if you're even an employee of the city, why would you even make that account or make that joke on one of your personal social media accounts? It doesn't make any sense here. So that's not good. But let's get into the Chiefs schedule here. In fact, let me go ahead and do the screen share here because I want to have this up here. There we go. Let's zoom in a little bit. Perfect. You guys can see that, I believe. Yeah. Okay, good. So here is where the bye week is going to be. Obviously, the first two games against two AFC North teams. And I think the Chiefs will be able to handle their own, especially with the offense and the way this offense has come together. These are going to be, two teams the Chiefs will be able to handle. The thing with the Ravens, I think their defense is pretty tough, but man, the Chiefs had no problems going up against the Ravens defense. Against the Ravens defense last year. Sorry, I was getting a text. Little bit of an error on my end, so I'm getting that fixed real quickly. But and then the Bengals, their defense was absolutely atrocious last year with bad tackling. Kind of reminded me of the Greg Robinson era of tackling, Gunther Cunningham defenses, where I mean the Chiefs could not tackle to save their lives in the 2000s. Just felt like. And I don't think the Bengals really did much to try to improve in that area there. So bear with me 1 second here. You guys all know I cannot talk and right at the same time. There we go. And that is fixed. Okay. But the bye week is in week 6. No, I mean, listen, I remember the Chiefs once had a bye week in week 3. Remember that in 2006? That was the same year Trent Green had his concussion. But if you look at Kansas City's schedule, yeah, they have the bye week in week 6. And then, you kind of have a weird schedule this year where you play every day of the week at least once, except for Tuesday. And I guess there's some conspiracy theory out there that the NFL is going to try to flex the Chiefs into a Tuesday. I mean, we'll see about that, but yeah, it is kind of a weird schedule here. You play Carolina on the road, and shouldn't be a very difficult team to play on the road. And then you come back and you play the Raiders at home. Should not be very difficult to do at home. Then you got a little bit of a break over the weekend. You kind of get to watch all of the other teams duke it out on Thanksgiving weekend. And then you come back for the first week of December with a bit of a break, too. You get to kind of just sit back and watch all of these other teams play, and then come back Monday a little rejuvenated. You get to get ready for that Sunday night game against the Chargers. I think that'll definitely help out for their prep here. This is obviously the time where people feel like this is a bit of a uphill battle for the Chiefs, playing what is it, like 3 games in the span of 11 or 12 days, and I can certainly understand that. But I will say the good part about this. So look at the Wednesday game. So the Chiefs are not scheduled to play a Thursday night game this year. The week 1 game, I want to be clear, does not count as a Thursday night football game because it's on NBC. NBC does not carry Thursday night football games. That's on Amazon Prime. The Chiefs are not on any Thursday night game outside of week 1 because of this, because they're going to be playing on Wednesday. So they're going to play the Texans on a Saturday. And then they play the Steelers on Christmas, which falls on a Wednesday this year. That basically is the same length as a Sunday to a Thursday. So that Wednesday Christmas game is essentially Kansas City's Thursday night football game this year, if you will. Now, once you get through that stretch, the good part about this is you play on December the 25th. And I want to make sure I have this right. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 or 11 days before your next game. I say 10 or 11 because, as you guys can see with the Broncos game in week 18, we don't know exactly what day everyone's going to play. Every team, if I'm not mistaken, their scheduled date is listed as January 4th/5th TBD, because the NFL wants to make sure they have the best nationally televised games for the Saturday slate of games, and then the best Sunday night football games, or Sunday night football game, I should say. Yeah, Josh is mentioning in the chat 1 home game in 49 days. Yeah, that is interesting as well. I did not notice that the first time when I looked at that. However, in fairness, that week 8 game in Allegiant Stadium, that's kind of a home game. Like, come on. But the good news is you get to come back and play another 2 consecutive home games here. And then you get another 2 home games, nationally televised home games. Not that the nationally televised games matters in terms of, body recovery and all of that. But I think the players in general would prefer to not have 12 o'clock. I can't remember who it was. Somebody on the Chiefs made a joke about, I think it was Kelsey on his podcast, actually, made a joke about how he's not, whenever the Chiefs have a 12 o'clock kickoff game, they're not used to that because they're so used to all of their games either being on primetime or 3:25 Central Time, that is, of course. Now, if you're playing on the West Coast, like the Raiders, the Chargers, the Broncos, well, it's going to be 1:25 or 2:25, depending where you are, west of Kansas, essentially. But you get the idea. A lot of the Chiefs have not had they don't have a lot of 12 o'clock kickoff games. So the good part about, these, like here in, late November, early December, you have, 2 games that, again, are not early in the day per se. Yeah, you got the Broncos game, but you're going to be at home already for quite some time here. Yeah, I know the bye week is kind of in a bad spot where you don't have a home game for a very long time. You go almost an entire month without a home game. Only 1 game in Arrowhead in the span of 50 days. That's just the way things work sometimes. I think the Raiders had actually a situation far worse than this, where their home game was, maybe it wasn't the Raiders. Maybe I'm confusing them for someone else. Their home game was in London. So they went a very long time without playing a real home game. I want to say like 6 or 7 weeks because they played consecutive road games. Then their home game was in London. So that's, another road game in reality. And then there was a bye week in there. So sometimes you see teams go through weird little stretches like this where they go a very long time without playing at home, or maybe only one home game, something along those lines. And it just happens to be the Chiefs this year. But I will say that 10-day break between Christmas and the first weekend of January, I love it. I really love it because let's just say the Chiefs do not have the number 1 seed this year. That 10-day break is going to be significant. Everyone calls it a mini bye week. That is pretty big. In fact, if the Chiefs play on January the 5th, that's even better. You just get another extra day. And again, those go a very long ways with football teams, especially Andy Reid, who has always been tabbed to do really well coming off a bye. And if you can find a way to lock up the 1 seed, whether it's before week 18 or doing it at week 18, then it's just another extra day's rest you can give your team here. I personally would not want the Chiefs to have the number 1 seed locked up before week 18, because if you play on December the 25th, if your starters are playing on December the 25th and you lock up the 1 seed going into week 18, I don't know, man. You would not be playing a game for more than 3 weeks. Your first game would not be until January the 18th or the 19th. Number 1 seeds, if I'm not mistaken, do play on a Saturday for the divisional round. So that would be 3.5 weeks. I don't know. I mean, like, not playing that long, can that really come back? I remember the Ravens. They had a situation where they had the number 1 seed locked up before the final week of the regular season, so they didn't play their starters. They obviously did not play during wild card weekend, and then for the divisional round, they just came out flat. I mean, they did not look like the same Ravens team in the regular season. The Chiefs have had a situation where they locked up the 1 seed in 2020 before week 17. That was back when we had 17 weeks instead of 18. Chad Henne started that game against the Chargers. And then the Chiefs did not play during wild card weekend. And then in the first round of the or first game of the divisional round, I think it was, against the Browns. Mahomes did go out with a head injury. They never officially ruled it as a concussion, but the Chiefs offense, they weren't terrible, but they didn't look, anything great either. Part of it is Mahomes missed an entire quarter. So the Chiefs offense still looked good, and they found a way to win that football game. So every team might respond to that kind of thing differently, but the 3.5 week break, that to me is the concern I have. So I'll leave that for you guys to speculate and discuss in the chat. The Chiefs have released LaMichael Pirine, who featured on the main roster a number of times. This could mean good news for some of our recent undrafted free agent pickups, as well as Louis Rizamet. I did see Derek Gore tweet Chiefs Kingdom. I don't know if that means he's coming back. So that's a possibility as well. Okay, let's get into everyone's favorite topic of the day, Harrison Butker. Listen, I'm not going to repeat anything I said. If you heard my comments on Wednesday's podcast, then you know my thoughts. I'll repeat some of it, because here's what I'm hearing out there. There are a lot of people pushing back, saying that, oh, well, Colin Kaepernick's getting brought up into the conversation and comparison. And a lot of people are pushing back, saying Colin Kaepernick was wearing his team's uniform when he protested. And then people bring up the examples that, if you go to a restaurant and you order a steak, you don't want your server or the chef to be protesting in the middle of making your steak. Those are things I've heard people say out there. People are talking about, you can't protest if you work at a grocery store, if you work in sales, or if you're a teacher. Well, first of all, there were teachers that wore safety pins several years ago as protests while working. So there are people who have protested while working. But why are we comparing the normal 9 to 5 jobs to NFL players and what they do? NFL players are allowed to kneel during the anthem. Now, me personally, I would not want them to, because that means, they're upset about something. And I know people had their opinions about Kaepernick and what he did, but I think he still brought attention to all of it. People then compared his kneeling to George Floyd's kneel, the George Floyd kneel. I don't think any logical person can say what Kaepernick was worse than what the police officer did in Minnesota. Which brings me to my next point, because people are saying don't protest when you're wearing your team's uniform. Okay, but when the George Floyd thing went down, Patrick Mahomes, Tyrann Mathieu, and several other black NFL players got together and they made a joint NFL Black Lives Matter video. And again, that was during their own time. This is during the offseason. And those players still got criticized for it. LeBron James, everyone knows the famous segment of "Shut Up and Dribble." That was in response to LeBron's comments, which was not while he was wearing his basketball uniform. So we've seen athletes speak up outside of the basketball court or the football field, and they don't get criticized for it. Now, understand something. Colby Covington, who is a UFC fighter, one of the best UFC contenders in the promotion right now, after every fight, when he's doing his Octagon interview with Joe Rogan or whoever's calling the fights that night, he'll get on the mic and praise Donald Trump and tell people to vote for him. Those same people who say Kaepernick was protesting while in uniform, they don't say the same things for Colby Covington. And I don't want to hear, oh, it's the UFC, not many people know about him. Colby Covington was the first fighter to take a UFC title, to the White House. Kind of like how, the Chiefs were at the White House last year to celebrate their Super Bowl win. Kind of like that. Colby Covington has also campaigned with Donald Trump, trying to help him, endorse him, try to get him some votes. So you can't sit here and say that, Kaepernick was in uniform when there are others who were not in uniform who still got criticized. Here's my thing. And like I said, I said this on Wednesday or on Wednesday's podcast, but I don't like the idea that athletes should never speak up on politics or religion. I would not like it if I was an athlete and I could not freely speak my mind on these things. And I want to be clear, I don't think anything Harrison Butker said was horrible or demeaning. I do think the term homemaker, what does that mean? I'll say one thing. There are two things I strongly disagreed with Butker on what he said. The first thing he said was, you may have a talent that you might not like or appreciate, but maybe God wants you to pursue it. And I'm like, you know what? I think you need to do what you think is best for you. But at the same time, he's not talking to me, and I'm not a Catholic. I'm not religious in general. He's talking to a lot of people, and I assume there might be a few people in the audience, or not the audience, the graduating class, who are not Catholic. Maybe they're at Benedictine on some sort of a scholarship, whatever the case may be. Or maybe it's a college close to their home, whatever. But in general, he's talking to a lot of people who are Catholic, who have a very strong connection and relationship to God, and that's perfectly fine. The other thing I disagreed with Butker is when he said that a woman's, and I'm paraphrasing here, I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but he said that a woman's life begins when she has kids. I don't really think, no, I don't think, and that, again, here's the other thing too. I don't think, I think it's possible he may have just misspoke, or maybe he wasn't really thinking when he said those exact words at those in that exact moment. I mean, a woman's life begins way before. Does a man and a woman's life change drastically when you have kids? Yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't have kids, I'm not married, but it doesn't take having kids and being married to know that it is a pretty big responsibility, 100%. Mike says, I think it was bad timing when Patrick and Brittany were trying to push women's empowerment. I don't really agree with that, Mike. I think that's all just a major coincidence. Because I'm seeing a lot of people kind of say what you're saying, bringing that up as a comparison. And again, like I don't think Butker was trying to be demeaning about women. I don't think he was saying, hey, women belong in the kitchen. Now, I want to be very clear. I don't speak for Harrison Butker. I see a lot of people speaking for him. I mean, unless I missed it, and Harrison Butker hired a bunch of publicists, I don't think people are in position to speak for another individual. To me, it's just like I think what Butker should do. I don't think he should apologize. I don't think he should get kicked off the team for this. That's stupid. For people signing that petition. I do think he should clarify on something. And listen, maybe his agent and the Chiefs PR staff, maybe they've already had a conversation and they said, look, if you get asked about it, just say no comment. I don't know what the right move is here from a PR standpoint moving forward, because I said this earlier, Andy Reid's going to get asked about it. Patrick Mahomes is going to get asked about it. Kelsey's going to get asked about it because Butker did. And I completely missed this when I listened to the clip. He actually made a reference to Travis Kelce's girlfriend, but he said my teammate's girlfriend. I did not make that connection at all to Taylor Swift when he said that. But in my opinion, I think some kind of clarification would be important on this. Again, I don't think he should apologize for anything. And again, maybe the Chiefs PR staff, they might have already had this conversation and they're saying, look, maybe it's best to just say no comment. I don't know what the best course of action is. The only like bad thing Butker did, I guess, is he kind of put himself and his teammates in position where the media is going to ask all the players about this. Do I think it's fair that Mahomes and everyone else is going to get asked about this and they have to come up with some kind of an answer on this? No. But that is kind of the way our media works today. Someone on the team says something big, the rest of the team is going to be asked about it 100%. I know Gracie Hunt showed her support for Harrison Butker on Fox News this morning. Tavia Hunt did on Instagram. Chris Jones did on Twitter. I'm sure Chris Jones is going to be asked. Someone in the media is going to say, hey, look, we saw your tweet. You said you love Butker. You're supporting him. You called him your brother. And maybe a follow-up question with that. I don't know. I will say, like, and I know he got on the offensive there talking about Joe Biden at one point and talking about lockdown during the pandemic. Listen, I'm not one to defend Joe Biden or any politician, but Donald Trump was the president when all these lockdowns happened. So I don't know, man. Like, maybe that part of his speech definitely should have been thought about twice. So I'm not 100% sure. Natalie, I skipped over your comment here. I think Butker can say what he wants, even though it's crazy in my opinion, but 100% agree with Cap LeBron. They need to keep the same energy. Yeah, this is my thing too. Like, look, if you think every single athlete should never talk about politics and religion, whatever, fine. I can respect the consistency. I disagree with it. I don't think athletes, I think athletes should be allowed to talk about these things freely. Whether you're LeBron, Kaepernick, Butker, Aaron Rodgers definitely has a lot to say. By the way, I want to, I see I'm getting off my soapbox here. Aaron Rodgers, this guy complains. He was on Tucker Carlson's podcast recently. And I listened to the first like 10 minutes and I immediately turned it off because they're talking about the pandemic. Listen, man, the pandemic is like the least thrilling thing to discuss. And when it's, you know, a conservative and Rodgers is kind of in the middle, I guess, it's like, wait, why are you spending this much time on the pandemic? I had to turn away from it. But what Rodgers continues to bitch about is that he gets silenced. Dude, you did a couple of hours on podcast, the biggest podcast that will ever exist on this planet. You just did a podcast with Tucker Carlson, one of the biggest names in all of media. You, during the football season, you go every week on Pat McAfee's show, arguably the most popular sports show out there. Who's silencing you? Nobody's silencing you. You are going on some of the biggest platforms and speaking your mind very freely, more than any NFL player out there. I mean, this is almost like when teams blow a big lead and they make all these excuses. Like, no, the refs did not screw you over. Taylor Swift is not why you lost. You lost because of you. And so Aaron Rodgers is going on all of these massive platforms, speaking his mind. And by the way, it's not like a 10-minute interview. I mean, he's doing almost an hour-long segment with McAfee every single week. He did a couple of hours with Rogan. He did a couple of hours with Tucker Carlson. Who's silencing you? But anyway, I had to get that out there because I heard him mention that on Tucker's podcast. I'll finish it up later, but my God, like, it's tough to get through the pandemic subject in 2024 of all times. But listen, athletes should be able to speak their minds as long as they're not, showing favoritism towards racism or child abuse or something really bad. That's when it would be an issue. Like, if someone is out there promoting really bad things, like, okay, there needs to be a serious conversation had with this person, but that's not what happened with Butker. So I'll leave it at that there. Let's block that spammer there who's claiming that he's going to give us all money and has a Cash App. Rogers equals, he means he gets laughed at. Yeah. On Pat McAfee, I watched again today. It didn't really seem like a joke. Oh, okay. I'm not exactly sure what that. So you guys are having conversations back and forth. I'm not exactly sure what that's in response to. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the whole Harrison Butker thing. Look, when Whoopi Goldberg on The View, the fucking View, has a very rational take, she basically said the same thing I said, is that, Butker should be able to speak his mind the same way Kaepernick did, and we should all be able to disagree with them and criticize them. You can do all of that without attacking someone. Tavia Hunt said that on her Instagram, and I agreed with it 100%, that you can disagree with someone respectfully. Unfortunately, we don't have that kind of ability to respectfully, rationally, and logically disagree with one another. I've been watching a lot of cable news this week because I want to see all of the reactions to Harrison Butker. And I watch CNN, I watch Fox News. They'll have a topic, and then they'll bring on like one of their buddies that agrees with them and on everything. It's like, wait a minute, you're already giving your opinion on this. Why are you bringing someone to agree with you on this? Because you can't get someone to disagree with you to come on, because everyone knows that people cannot rationally have a conversation when two people disagree, especially on, cable news TV of all places. John says, as a father, I say all the time that, quote, I started my living my life the day my daughter was born, quote, I was 31 when I had my daughter, meaning that I stopped being selfish. I feel that Butker was probably making a comment like that, meaning any mother understands that your life changes. See, okay, I agree with you, John. And that's what I was saying earlier, too. Like, a woman's life does not start then. Does it change a lot? Yeah, sure. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's like, choice of words and maybe how people perceive things. And again, not to get political, I just get annoyed. Like, liberals all hear one thing and conservatives hear a different thing in unison too. It's like all the liberals hear the same thing together and all the conservatives hear the same thing. I'm like, do you guys all, like, all of your brains think the same way? It's just weird. I never get it. Not at all. Okay, let's move on from that. I've said everything I wanted to say on that. If you guys have comments you want to chime in, you're more than welcome to, and I'll read them and respond to those. I do want to get into the big news that came out earlier today, where two offensive linemen were arrested today. Wanya Morris, the left tackle for the Chiefs, and then I have no idea how you say his first name, but the short version of it, Chuck Godrick. They were arrested late Thursday night in Johnson County for possession of marijuana and THC. Bond was posted at $2,500, and they were both released this afternoon. So they kind of got to get away from the Harrison Butker talk out there. Matt says we're turning into the Raiders. Yeah, unfortunately we are. Unfortunately. First of all, this is just weed. As long as they were not driving, I do not give a damn. Okay? Kansas, get with the times. Please, get with the times. Now, I will say the problem here is the number of incidents keep adding up. I've already had a discussion about this. I mentioned this when the car accident with Rashee Rice happened. I don't know what you do. Like, if you're Andy Reid, you probably have a massive headache today just from all of the off the field. Like, not that Harrison Butker did anything bad criminally. It's just the bad PR that comes with it. Rashee Rice is second. Here's the thing. Andy Reid, for those of you who joined the live stream late, I mentioned at the beginning of the live stream, there are 3 topics that we've yet to hear Andy Reid respond to, or at least get asked about. Now, I don't think he's going to say much on a couple of them, but the Rashee Rice bar incident, there are some questions that I think people are going to want to know. They want to ask Andy Reid. The Harrison Butker speech, that's going to get brought up. And then the Morris and Godrick arrest, which, again, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's just piling on at this point. Listen, man, this team's had a lot of issues with off the field trouble. Going from Britt Reed, the son of the coach of all people. And listen, I want to be clear. Like, there are some incidents where there wasn't a lot of clarity as to what happened exactly, such as the Justin Ross domestic violence incident, the Willie Gay domestic violence incident, Tyreek Hill with the child abuse allegation. But they're finding those players are finding themselves in bad situations. Frank Clark with the Uzis, which, again, not the worst thing in the world, but rules are rules. You can't be breaking them. Listen, I'm sure there's more, and I just don't remember it because there's too damn many now. I mean, obviously the Kareem Hunt one was a huge one, and the Chiefs ended up cutting him. And I'm just talking recent memory. I know there's more in the past with like Jovan Belcher and Larry Johnson. But I just think at the end of the day, it's like, what is going on with this football team and their players getting into a lot of trouble? If this was a college football team, and I want to be clear, it's not, but if this was a college football team, the head coach would get canned for constant having players in the news getting into legal trouble. Now, it doesn't work the same way in the NFL. These are all grown-ass men who are mature enough to know right from wrong. So I'm not exactly sure if you're the Chiefs, and I'm not talking about the PR staff, which, by the way, shout out to the PR staff because they are working their ass off this offseason. They do not have a break. I mean, they have a long list of shit to work on for next Monday when the media gets ready to visit the Chiefs for OTAs. Man, I get scared just to look at notifications at my phone from my phone at this rate. But anyway, if you're Andy Reid, if you're Brett Veach, if you're Mark Donovan, the president of the team, if you're Clark Hunt, the number one guy at the top of this franchise, a conversation needs to be had, not individually with anyone, as a group. Andy Reid needs to lead that discussion, because when Andy Reid talks, everyone listens. I mean, everyone knows how great Andy Reid is and everything he's accomplished. When he speaks, you listen. You know, everyone just has Andy Reid has everyone's attention and respect because of what he's accomplished. Not to mention he's back-to-back, the head coach of the back-to-back reigning champs. But you need to address the entire team next Monday when they all get together for the first OTA session and say, look, all you veterans here, you guys got to get your shit together, because this is not acceptable to put our team in a bad light, especially during the best run in this team's history, maybe one of the best runs in NFL history. And then look at the rookies who are going to be in the same room and say, look, you guys might be the best at your positions, but you guys don't get a free pass either. There needs to be a very stern warning sent to the entire organization and let them know that these incidents are not okay. They're not acceptable. I'm sure they tell these players to stay out of trouble, but clearly they don't do a good enough job of addressing that kind of thing. And I don't know, those four guys I mentioned, Andy Reid, Clark Hunt, Brett Veach, Mark Donovan, how do you approach this with your players? Because something needs to be said. Obviously, you need to speak to Godrick, Morris, and Rice all individually about all of this. I'm sure they already have. But this is not a good look for your franchise in the middle of a three-peat. An attempt to three-peat, I should say. I was joking earlier on social media, the 30 for 30 or whatever documentary is going to come out about this Chiefs dynasty in 30, 40 years. It's going to be a very interesting one, because you're going to talk about all the success on the field and then everything that came with it, which was Taylor Swift, Red Extreme versus X Factor, Chiefsaholic, Harrison Butker, and all these other like off the field distractions. Because if you're going to, like, let's say in 30 years, you want to talk about this Chiefs dynasty and you want to give a very fair and honest story, you have to talk about everything that took place with the Patriots dynasty. I mean, every team has players that get into trouble, but you didn't hear about this kind of stuff consistently with the Patriots dynasty. Because it does take away from the fans' joy and their celebration of how well this team's doing. I mean, listen, we all know the heartbreak this franchise has gone through over the years. Lynn Elliott, the no punt game, massive blown leads in playoff games. That it still kind of happens today, like it happened against the Eagles on Monday Night Football last year. But not that there was a playoff game, but still a big marquee game, Monday Night Football, and the way it happened in the end with the drop. But I digress. The Chiefs need to find a way to minimize this. How do you do that? I don't know. But those four guys are in the positions that they're in: Reed, Hunt, Veach, and Donovan. So they know what to do. And it's time to start giving stern warnings to this team. I don't know, man. It's not a good look. Kansas needs to wake up and legalize weed. Yeah, I think a lot of people agree with that. It's all unnecessary distraction for the team and the organization. I agree with you, mile marker. Mile marker 301. Where's that? I stand with Butker. Matt says, freedom of speech. This country is too soft. Matt, I agree with you. I mean, like, everyone should be able to speak their minds, but let's be honest here too. And not everyone thinks this way, but let's be honest, the hypocrisy, and again, it's from both sides. The same people who are defending Butker criticized LeBron and Kaepernick, and the same people who defended Kaepernick and LeBron criticized people like Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers and Butker. There's a lot of inconsistencies out there from both sides. I want to be clear on that. I'm not saying you specifically, but that's just kind of my reaction when I see your comment. Is Justin Ross going to be able to make any impact this year? I was thinking about this the other day. Because last year with your wide receivers, I think there was a lot of hope for potential. Because let's talk about last year's wide receivers going into week 1. You had Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who had, if I'm not mistaken, the most experience on the team and has good speed too. You have Kadarius Toney, who has very good speed and can do some things with his feet, can definitely do damage to a defense. Sky Moore and Rashee Rice, recent second-round draft picks. Justin Ross, I mean, there's been so much hype about him for so long. There was a lot of hope for him going into last year. The Chiefs had a lot of wide receivers, and I mentioned this last year. They had a lot of wide receivers that had a lot of what ifs, a lot of potential talk. There was no certainty with the wide receiver position last year, which is a big reason why the Chiefs were trying to get DeAndre Hopkins, but they couldn't because they were still in a bind with the the Chris Jones contract. So you look at Justin Ross today. Thankfully, you're not in position to rely on Justin Ross, but it'd be nice if he lived up to the hype, because that's just another weapon for Patrick Mahomes. But how many more opportunities can you give the guy? Because word is, and this came from Albert Breer, he had a very hard time picking up the offense. Why? I don't know why. But that's just that was the word that was out there. I think he's got an opportunity, Matt, to be a guy that can help provide good depth on this team. Because when you look at the wide receivers, you got some good, reliable starters in Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown. I think Mahomes is going to have a lot of fun working with those two receivers. And you also got Kelsey, who's going to help take some attention away from those two guys. So defenses cannot double team everyone. However, I do question the depth on this team. Rashee Rice, is he available? Is he not? We'll see. If he's available, that's just even better for Mahomes. If Kadarius Toney can play better, that'll only help this offense. If Justin Ross can live up to the hype, and this might be his last chance at it, that's just going to help this offense even more. I hope so, but I don't know. His best opportunity right now is to prove that he can be a good player for depth purposes on this team. Let's get our shit right. Yeah, you got that right, Joe. Chris says, I'm curious how much they had on them. I don't see an arrest for a small amount. I think you're talking about Godrick and Morris. It says bond was $2,500 and that they were released earlier this afternoon, if that's what you're asking. The light is on the Chiefs because of the winnings. If we weren't winning, Butker would not be a national issue. I do agree with you, Antoinette. Like, because the Chiefs are so good right now that, you use Aaron Hernandez. Casey Mike used Aaron Hernandez as an example. Yeah, that's actually a very good point. But to go back to Antoinette's comment here, I mean, if the Chiefs were a 3-win or a 4-win football team and Butker made these comments, it would still be a big deal, but I don't think this story would drag out all week long like it has this week. I do agree with that. And that's just, kind of the way things work with our society. If an actor who the only role that the actor gets in TV shows and movies are like red shirt roles where he's just, like a server or a bartender in the background, those kinds of roles where he's only there for like 5-10 seconds. Like if an actor spoke up and said something powerful, no one would really care because no one would even know who that is. Even like a lot of fans who follow football closely might still not know who Butker is because he's a kicker and Not everyone knows who all the kickers are. If you follow football very, very, very closely, like you try to watch every second of every single NFL game possible, then yeah, you probably have a very good idea who Butker is, because he's made some huge kicks in some big playoff games in recent years. He tied the Super Bowl 58 game, sending it into overtime. He had game-winning field goals the postseason before against the Eagles and the Bengals on the Super Bowl and AFC title game. So, yeah, I mean, if you follow football very closely like I do, then, yeah, you have a good idea who Butker is, because he's made some massive kicks in some big games recently. But, yeah, you know, being champs, it comes with the territory. All these years, man, we've been wanting this football team to be great. And they finally are. And it comes with all this baggage off the field. It's the whole NFL. It's the only job in America that felons can play. Yeah, I guess you're right about that, Bob. Northern Michigan. Shout out to Northern Michigan. Oh, okay. Cheer for the Chiefs if you ain't playing my Lions. Dude, props to your Lions last week in week 1, because Lions fans showed up in that game. They did. And boy, did they rub it in. Blake's asking, what's your overall record prediction for this year? Over or under 11 wins? I'm going 14-3. You know, they're going to lose a game or two that they shouldn't lose. They'll lose to Buffalo because Buffalo owns the Chiefs in the regular season. We all know who really wins when it matters the most. So I'm going 14-3. Take the over on that one, Blake. That's an easy one for me. The Chiefs defense, yeah, they're going to take a tiny step back with the loss of Snead and Gay, and they didn't really work to really address those two losses, but I think they have suitable replacements. I'm excited for Leo Chenal. I really am. I think that dude is the real deal at that position. I think he's finally going to have the opportunity to play a lot more too. So I'm excited to see him. And then with the AFC title, or the cornerbacks, I say AFC title game because I was thinking of what Kay Adams said, and I brought this up too. Josh Williams and Jalen Watson both came away with picks in that AFC title game. And I know people are going to say, oh, well, Burrow did not have 3 of his starting offensive linemen. Okay. But those 2 picks he threw to Watson and to Williams, neither one of them involved any pressure on Burrow. So you can't use that as an excuse. And if I'm not mistaken, Josh Williams' interception was in the 4th quarter with the game tied. And I think Burrow was going for the end zone too in that one. So, and I love how Kay Adams worded it. She said, I remember that game because Jamar Chase and T. Higgins did not go off. So that was a nice little jab to the Bengals there. And boy, Kay Adams has kind of come around on the Chiefs. Imagine that. Matthew says, this is why the NFL has never had a three-peat. It's difficult enough just getting back to the Super Bowl. Add in unnecessary off-the-field incidents. Yeah, unfortunately, the Chiefs just lately always seem to be in the news for the wrong reason, and it keeps continuing. No, that's a really good point. Going back-to-back is very difficult. The crazy thing about it is the Chiefs have had 2 chances to go back-to-back, 2019 and 2020. Obviously, we know what happened in 2020 in Super Bowl 55. And then after not going to the Super Bowl the following year, they returned the year after, winning Super Bowls 57 and 58. So it is kind of like crazy. The Chiefs have been to 4 Super Bowls in 5 years. They've won 3 of those 4 in the span of 5 years. It is not easy to go back-to-back or to even go back-to-back twice in the span of 5 years. But if there is a team that can do it, I think it's the Chiefs. All this off the field stuff, yeah, I mean, it's not good. I get where you're coming from. The only like major one is the Rashee Rice one. Like, how many games is he going to get, and when is that going to be? Is it going to be this year? Is it going to be next year? Or are they going to wait for the trial to finish? We'll see. But that is, I mean, like I said earlier, like the documentaries that are going to come out about this football team, the dynasty, and all of that stuff. There's a lot of content. There's a lot of content, unfortunately, to get into with this team. Irvin says people are too sensitive anymore when a person voices their opinion that doesn't match what they think. I agree 100% with you, Irvin. I don't have any issues with what you are saying. That comment is very factual. And listen, I mean, if you disagree with someone, fine. Like, let's have a rational conversation about it. And then at the end of the day, you're just going to have to agree to disagree on certain subjects. Matt says, I hope so, but I agree. Probably last chance for Ross. Yeah. And again, like all this hype that Justin Ross is getting, like, you guys, listen, if you guys have followed me long enough, you all know I don't go crazy over OTAs and training camp. I just don't. So when Justin Ross gets all this hype in practice, it's like, okay, cool. Let's see that in a game. And we have it. And here's the other thing, too. Justin Ross did not have, how many catches did Justin Ross have last year? Justin Ross, ESPN, because he didn't have many. And here's the point I'm trying to get at here. He had 6 catches for 53 yards. Okay. Of those 6 catches, he was targeted 11 times. He had a couple of drops last year for the Chiefs. So even though he was targeted just 11 times, he committed a couple of drops. The entire receiving core and even the tight ends too, they just had so many drops all of last year. And it's like, why? Why was it the entire receiving core? Which is why I question the coaching staff with Connor Embry and Matt Nagy. Hopefully they've come up with a plan to nullify all of that this offseason. Yeah, they drafted Xavier Worthy, who is guilty of some drops in college. But man, I think you can still, like, he can still make up for that in the NFL with his speed and playmaking ability. You just cannot pass up on a guy like Xavier Worthy. You can't. You just can't. If the NFL wants to put the hammer down, go ahead and suspend Rice for the entire year. They suspended Ridley for betting for his team, yet let Deshaun Jackson and other sexual assault abusers play. Yet cry foul when Butker speaks to a Catholic college as a practicing Catholic. Now, this is a really good point here, Blake. The thing about like the betting, okay, I can understand, like, okay, there's a lot of legal machinations involved in making betting happen. But still, yeah, you raise a good point, and people have brought this up before. You suspend someone that long for betting, but domestic violence, activity, sexual assault activity, that doesn't get a year's suspension. Like, yeah, we can definitely see the inconsistencies on that, and that'll be brought up. And then Roger Goodell barely does any interviews. He only does them like 5 or 6 times a year. So you don't get it. And you only have a limited amount of time with Goodell. So you can't ask this in the moment when it happens. But yet he requires everyone to speak at least once a week, which is stupid. Yeah, the new Patriots. Bob says 12-5. Joe says 13-4. Yeah, reasonable. I mean, 12-5 might not get you a number 1 seed. But close to it. 13-4 is certainly doable. I think that's what the Ravens record was last year. Teresa says the NFL is totally inconsistent in how they punish types of offenders. Yeah, no, we just talked about that. Yeah, 100%, Teresa. I agree with you. And again, it's like, how do you justify those things too? It just doesn't make any sense the way they go about it. A couple more here, and I'll sign off. Mike says people are human, and luckily enough, we got Veach. Yeah. Veach, I mean, definitely needs to say his matter in all of this, because, I mean, it's safe to say, the players have a great deal of respect for Veach, the way he's built this football team. So, if he's got something to say to this football team, yeah, because you don't ever draft someone or trade for someone or sign someone just for them to get in trouble and for it to be a wasted draft pick. Like, the reason why you're not really willing to give up on Rashee Rice is because you spent a 2nd-round draft pick on him, and he just had the best postseason for a rookie receiver ever in NFL history. So, and now I know a lot of you guys might say, well, they didn't keep Kareem Hunt. Yeah, I mean, he was dishonest about it. And I don't think the dishonesty is the only reason why he got cut. I think, what you saw on footage was disturbing. I know it could have been a lot worse for sure, but it was still very bad. And on top of that, like, the running back position is, that's easier to replace. Neither here nor there, though. Damian Williams did just fine in the playoffs for the Chiefs that year, from what I recall. Moved to KC from the San Francisco Bay Area, so I cheer for the Niners too. Yeah. So your team won the Super Bowl regardless, mile marker 301. You had no issues with that Super Bowl. Meanwhile, people like me were freaking out. Man, I've watched that overtime, the late fourth quarter drive under 2 minutes, and the overtime drives. Man, even though like I know how that ends, I still like can't sit still just watching that. That's what you get when you're a Chiefs fan. Bob says Butker likes controversy. He puts it out. He gets feedback. I don't know, Bob. I don't think so. Listen, we live in very crazy times where if you say something out of line, people send death threats and to you or to your family, which I think is very cowardly. I don't think Butker would ever do that to be controversial, because in today's age, unfortunately, when you say something controversial, it puts you and your family in a bad spot. Which again, I'm not defending that. It's cowardly. Second time I'm saying that. I want to be very clear, but I don't think anyone would do that just to be controversial. No way. Like there was a point in time where, you know, no news is bad news. You know, there's no such thing as bad PR. But I think with social media and how much that's evolved over the years, it's like, okay, bad PR and controversy kind of like you need to be vigilant about what you say and what you do. Listen, I could have great football opinions, but they might not get out there for the whole world to see. But I could say something very idiotic and irresponsible on my social media, and it will go viral, because that's just the kind of thing that goes viral nowadays. Those kinds of comments. That's kind of the way our world works. So it is important to kind of be careful. Even like me, because I've tried to be very careful with my opinions on Butker and this whole subject. I think if you guys listen to the podcast on Wednesday, and if you've been listening to me today, you guys know damn well that I'm pretty neutral and I'm not really picking sides on any of this. But even then, even being neutral on this, people don't like that. They're like, oh, why are you not condemning what he said? Why are you supporting it? Why are you defending it? Why are you not defending it? It's like, man, it doesn't matter if you're for a side, against a side, or if you're neutral. You're just going to piss off somebody. But that's the world. That's the internet for you today. That's just the way it works. Matthew says, regarding the NFL schedule, the NFL wants it very hard for the Chiefs to attain the goal that they have in mind to win 3 in a row. Listen, I've got no problems with that. You want to go win 3 in a row and be the first team to ever do it? Good. Make it tough. It should not be easy to win 3 straight Super Bowls. It never should. Is the NFL schedule this year tough for the Chiefs? Yeah, especially some of the games that were scheduled, the times and all that stuff. It's a little bit of a challenge. Me personally, I love that they're playing on almost every day of the week, except for Tuesday this year. That's kind of cool. But I can understand, like, physically speaking, that that whole thing, it's not easy to do. So go for it, man. Bring it. Farzine, you never piss anyone off. I would say you pissed me off by saying go Avs, but they're playing the Dallas Stars. So I will say go Avs tonight, just because I do not like the Dallas Stars. I'm a Golden Knights fan. The Golden Knights and the Avs have had some good playoff matchups in recent memory. I've listened many times, just finally committed. I think I first saw you on the Grossi raid. I appreciate it. Yeah, okay, okay. I remember when that happened. So so funny. So Tom Grossi, for those who don't know, he's a big Green Bay Packers fan. He just won the NFL Fan of the Year award, which is pretty cool. He's not like I don't really watch a lot of his content, but I'm aware of like what he does. And I think he like raised money for a charity, which was awesome. Like, that's pretty cool. Yeah, you definitely deserve to be Fan of the Year if you find a way to use your platform like that. But I guess something he does, and I did not know what a raid meant at the time, but I guess I've seen people on Twitch do this, and I guess some people on YouTube do it as well. I guess he picked me at some point to raid, and a bunch of you Grossi posse guys did come into my YouTube comment section, but I was reading only the Facebook comments. And I looked back later and I'm seeing people say, oh, this raid was a fail. He's only reading the Facebook comments. And I look later, I'm like, who are these people? Like, where did it? Because everyone wrote Grossi Posse and I didn't know what that meant. So that is funny that you mentioned that. But I appreciate you following from that. And shout outs to Tom for picking me to rate at one point. So that's pretty cool that you followed from that. Last year the Chiefs had a tough road to the Super Bowl. That is true. Nothing the Chiefs have done. By the way, let's talk about this for a second. None of the 3 Super Bowls the Chiefs have won have been easy. First of all, they trailed by 10 points in all of those Super Bowls. You could make a very strong argument that they absolutely should not have won Super Bowl 54. The 49ers are up by 10 midway through the fourth quarter and you give up 21 points. Yeah. I mean, that's bad. You definitely, and listen, the Chiefs have been in that spot where they've allowed big comebacks in postseason games against the Colts, against the Titans, against the Bengals. So the Chiefs have been on the other side of that very damn well. We know. So that whole thing, I mean, it happens. And now the Chiefs have kind of been on the other side of it where they get to experience where they come back in these games, but not just the Super Bowl. I mean, think about like the stress in that AFC title game against the Bengals with less than 2 minutes. The way that went down, the 24-0 deficit against the Texans. I think a lot of people wrote the Chiefs off, including every single Chiefs fan. There was even a Chiefs fan who like videoed himself leaving early, which I thought was interesting. Listen, there's more, and I just cannot think of that right now. Patrick Mahomes getting injured in that Browns game. I know the Chiefs did not win a Super Bowl that postseason, but still, that game had all. I mean, that was a roller coaster of emotions. The Ravens AFC title game, that was also a roller coaster of emotions for both teams. Both teams kind of went through the struggles in that one. The 13-second Bills game, and then the Bills missing the field goal under 2 minutes. Like, these postseason games, man, they have been very, very stressful and not easy. Something this just kind of came to my mind right now. I would be very curious to go back and watch some of the Patriots playoff games. I know not all of them are available on NFL Plus, but I would like to see some of their postseason games. And did they have as many stressful games? Obviously, they had a lot of Super Bowl. Their first 3 Super Bowl wins were game-winning field goals from Vinatieri. In fact, every Patriots Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken, was close. Even when they beat the Rams by more than 3 points or more than one possession, it was still a very low-scoring game. Like, it was never out of reach for the Rams. So I'd be very curious to go back and check out some of those Patriots playoff games. Specifically the 6 times they won the Super Bowl, those postseasons, and see, like, how stressful were all of those games. I'd be very curious to go back and look into that. Yeah, and the thing I hate about living in KC is like their games start at 9:30. So whenever they play like an Eastern Conference team or they play a team like Dallas, who's in the Western Conference, but they're in the Central Time Zone. I definitely try to take advantage of that on weekdays. Not a big issue on weekends, but I'm also getting to that point where I can't. Staying up late just is not easy. Like being a UFC fan, as much as I love the UFC, it's not easy to do, even on a Saturday at night. But I make it work one way or another. During that Texans game, I went to bed. I live in the Houston area until we took the lead. I will never forget that second quarter. Like just the emotions in that football game. And I can't remember which touchdown it was. I think it was the one to take the lead before halftime. Travis Kelce scored that touchdown, and everyone in that stadium just went apeshit nuts. Like what the hell happened the first, 20 minutes to even allow? And listen, Tyreek Hill fumbling a punt return in front of his own end zone. The Colquitt blocked punt into the end zone for a touchdown. Like, you still get credit for making those plays, but a lot of that was Kansas City shooting themselves in the foot. So that is still, though, to overcome a 24-0 deficit in one quarter, how the hell do you do that? How? Matthew says, let's just hope the Chiefs can create history. Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I know Mahomes still has some work to do to chase Brady, but if you three-peat, that is a big feather in your cap with this whole Brady versus Mahomes debate. Because even Mahomes kind of acknowledged that in his interview with, not Sports Illustrated, Time Magazine. So, all right, I'll read these last two here. Sean and then Teresa gets the final question here. Sean says the Pats always blew out the Steelers in the playoffs. Did they? I mean, I'm not a Patriots or a Steelers fan, so I guess I don't remember those things easily. I'm trying to think of Patriots and Steelers playoff games because the Steelers did have some success even during the Patriots era, that Patriots dynasty. This is a really good question. Teresa's asking. This is kind of a good way to end the show today. What is your take on so many NFL games on streaming? Okay, let's go over the streaming services you need if you want to watch football games this year. You're going to need Netflix for the Christmas games. Excuse me. You're going to need Netflix for the Christmas games. You're going to need Peacock for the not the Black Friday game. I'm sorry, the Brazil game in Week 1 between the Eagles and Packers. What else do you need? You're going to need Prime for the Black Friday game. And then you're going to need YouTube TV if you want NFL Sunday Ticket. If you're like me and you try to catch as many games possible and you want every game possible, you're going to need YouTube TV, which is going to cost much more. Now, my question here is, if you're going to need all of those streaming services, what is the purpose of NFL Plus? I have NFL Plus so I can go back and rewatch Chiefs games or other games, and also use the All 22, which is essentially film study. Because the NFL promotes NFL Plus a lot, and I've actually used my phone to watch games on NFL Plus on a Thursday night, which, by the way, I forgot to mention, you're going to need Prime for Thursday night games also. And then you're going to need maybe one or two of those for the playoffs this year. The thing to keep in mind about the streaming services is the NFL's, I mean, this is obviously streaming is where it's at now. Think of the most popular TV shows or movies that are out there today. A lot of them are, Netflix originals or Disney Plus originals, Hulu originals. There are a lot of very popular shows on Netflix that you cannot get anywhere else. So streaming is taking over gradually, and the NFL is 2 feet in on trying to get into the streaming world. I don't know how many of you guys are WWE fans, but WWE Monday Night Raw, which has been around for a very long time, I think 31 years now, WWE Raw is going to be exclusive, I think exclusively on Netflix starting in 2025. That is huge. That show has been on the USA Network for a very long time. They were on TNN for a little bit, which rebranded to Spike TV. But man, that is a huge move going from a longtime network partner to Netflix. That is a huge deal. And I think we're only going to see more and more of this. And here's the other thing too. When they put the Chiefs and Dolphins game on Peacock last year, the halftime hosts, because they announced the schedule during Sunday night, the playoff schedule during the last Sunday night football game, all of the TV hosts on NBC, they're like, oh, you can only get that on Peacock. Can't get it anywhere else, only Peacock. Well, that's very misleading because those who live in the Kansas City and Miami areas, they can get it on a local channel. If you're in Kansas City, you could get it on NBC, but the national NBC people don't know that. The reason you get it on NBC in Kansas City is because Channel 41 is the home of the Chiefs, which is why all of their preseason games are on that channel. If the Chiefs play on a streaming service game, so they have two of those this year, the Netflix game against the Steelers and the Black Friday Prime game against the Raiders. If you do not live in Kansas City, you're going to have to subscribe to those streaming services. Unless you live in Las Vegas, you can catch the Chiefs Raiders Black Friday game on whatever station is the home of the Raiders in Vegas. But you would still need, Netflix to be able to watch a Christmas game. This is kind of where it's going. But to go back to the Chiefs and Dolphins playoff game on Peacock, why did they pick the Chiefs? Well, for one, they're the team that everyone wants to keep an eye on, whether you love them or you hate them. But they all know the Swifties, they're going to subscribe. And I think Peacock announced that they had 23 million viewers for that game. That's good. That is good for a playoff game. This is the first ever playoff game that was exclusively on a streaming service. And the numbers did well. Why do you think the Chiefs are on two streaming services? Because of the Swifties. Now, you do need to have an open, honest test about how these games are going to work without the Swiftie crowd. I mean, we're being honest here, because listen, everyone knows that Chiefs games are going to have massive ratings because of the attention Swift brings. And listen, I did not realize this about Taylor Swift. I knew she had a passionate fan base, but whatever shirt or hat she wears, it sells out. She was wearing a New Heights hat when she was hanging out with Travis at Coachella, and the New Heights hat was sold out instantly. So, dude, she has quite a reach. I did not realize that, honestly, until the whole Kelsey thing and his jersey sales going up and all of that. Now, and I don't have in front of me the entire NFL schedule, but I know the Ravens and someone else, they play on Christmas also. That is going to be on Netflix. A lot of people have Netflix already, so I'm sure that game will do good numbers, even on a holiday. Because, if you're gathering with people on a holiday, you definitely want to have football on in the background. Some people will just watch it casually. Some will watch it very closely, for sure. But I'm very curious. What are you going to do without the Swiftie crowd? Because we know Kelsey's retiring in the next year or two. How is that going to go for your attempt to go into the streaming service world? And by the way, Roger Goodell in his press conference last year before the Super Bowl said that the Super Bowl will never go to a streaming service as long as he's the commissioner. Do you really think people believe that crock of bullshit? Because I don't. If that's not going to be the case, then why are you putting a playoff game on a streaming service already? Why are all of your Thursday night games on a streaming service? That doesn't make any sense. I remember there was a point in time when not everyone had NFL Network. I had Time Warner Cable when they started doing Thursday night football games. So as a Time Warner customer, I missed all those Thursday games. So to me, it's like you're going to a place now where you're going back to people not having things and not being able to see the games. Um, I guess if you're an NFL fanatic like I, or just a sports fanatic in general, you're going to have to start making decisions here. Is it worth it for you to have cable? Because maybe you're better off having YouTube TV and NFL Plus or whatever streaming services you really need to be able to watch your teams or all of football if you want to catch every single game like I do. Matthews lives in the UK. Okay, Matthew, answer this for me, please. How do you know the televised schedule for Christmas? Like how are we going to watch Chiefs versus Steelers on Christmas? How are we going to watch the Black Friday game between the Chiefs and Raiders? What channel is that for you? I think Sky Sports is a big network outside of the US for like Canada and the UK. So I'm very curious for like the international audience. How is it for you guys? And by the way, I appreciate you listening all the way from the UK. The games are on Sky Sports. Okay, that's what I just mentioned. Okay, cool. So yeah. See, here's my point. Here's the reason I ask that. Because you have all these websites that you can go to get these games for free. They exist. Let's not act like that we don't know this. The NFL and the UFC have been teaming up trying to take down these websites. So those websites are going to get shut down eventually because the UFC and the NFL, they want to be able to make their money through streaming services. They want to get every dollar possible. And I get it. That's kind of where it's at now. And by the way, here's something I'm really curious to see, because Peacock obviously had a big success with their playoff game last year in KC between the Chiefs and Dolphins. Again, you got to do a legitimate test without the Swiftie crowd, though. And so what I'm trying to get at here is there a possibility that Peacock, and I've already put this out there before, but for those who haven't heard me say it before, is there a possibility that Peacock will fight to try to get their games on Sunday Night Football? Because Sunday Night Football is on NBC and Peacock is owned by NBC. So NBC might say, hey, look, you're letting Amazon get all of their games, Thursday games, on Prime. Can we get ours on Peacock? Why can't we? We can make a lot of money in this. You, us, everyone can win in this. So, and then, there's the other side of it. What about Fox Sports Go? I know that's not as big of a streaming service. What about Paramount Plus, which is owned by Paramount and Viacom, which is under the CBS umbrella? That, those kinds of things you got to just start considering. And yeah, I mean, there are people who do not have the luxury of being able to subscribe to all of those. Which again, kind of goes back to, and I'm going to try to pay attention to this year. If I have NFL Plus, which I do, can I just use that? Now, the downside of NFL Plus, they don't have a TV app. Or to my understanding, they don't. Now, there is you can take advantage of technology and hook your phone to your TV, but a lot of people like to be on their phones during games too. So I'm not 100% sure what the future is going to look like exactly with streaming services, but it is kind of where it's at. That's where they're going to be making a lot of their money. And yeah, the Super Bowl will be there one day, whether Goodell's going to admit it or not. Yeah, I appreciate the love for the hat. This was so here's a crazy thing. This is actually a Kansas City Royals hat, but on the back of it, it just says Kansas City. So it doesn't say Royals. Because yeah, this is not the Chiefs logo. This is the Royals logo, but you wouldn't really know because it just says KC. It doesn't say Royals on the side. No, it doesn't. But yeah, this was for Independence Day. And here's my thing. I think honestly, a lot of these like companies that make apparel, they've gotten lazy with the designs. I honestly don't have a Super Bowl. I'm not a big fan of the Super Bowl championships hats because I'm not a big fan of the flat tops. So I have not even had a Super Bowl hat from this year. I kind of gave up looking because a lot of the designs are terrible. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the red, white, and blue apparel. For Chiefs, Royals, Vegas Golden Knights, whatever. Those stuff do look really cool. So I've always been a big fan of that kind of thing. This was from Independence Day 2 years ago. They came out with new ones last year, and they were just bad. Here's my thing, like, I don't think it's terrible to bring out past designs like this one. Not at all. So yeah, I have a few like patriotic red, white, and blue Chief shirts, and those are so cool. Like I've always been a big fan of those kinds of things. But man, I've been wanting to get a UFC hat, like another UFC hat for a long time. They make some of the ugliest hats ever. You know, like why? The UFC brags about how much money they make. It shouldn't be that hard to hire a company that can make a good design. I think they're teamed up with Venom. It's not that hard to find the right company to do that kind of thing. 50 low profile, which I am not a fan of. I wish they made them in standard 5950 and or the standard snap hat. Yeah, a lot of people seem to like that. Me personally, I like the curved bill. I got a new hat today. It's not a sports related hat. It's got the American flag. It's actually a really cool design. But I got it in with a curved bill, which I like. It's funny. The store associate actually came up. She's like, I have these hats also, and they were all flat tops. I'm like, yeah, thank you, but I'm not a flat top person. Not my style at all. Okay, guys, this has been a long live stream. I would listen, every time I do this, I'm like, who's gonna watch on a Friday night? You guys keep showing up every single Friday night, and we have not done a Red Friday live chat in a couple of weeks. So I appreciate all of you guys who have been showing up for these live streams, especially on a Friday night. Unfortunately, like the topics we're discussing are not as fun. But hey, kind of what I was saying earlier, no news is bad news, I guess. So this is kind of the way it works out. What I do appreciate is whether you guys agree with me or disagree with me, or whether you guys disagree with one another in the chat. We have had some very rational discussions on the live streams. Now, I can't say the same for the comment section on all of my posts. But hey, man, I mean, not everyone can do that. But I appreciate you guys on these live streams for being pretty cool and just being logical and trying to have rational discussions. Yeah, thanks, Teresa. Teresa says, pray things stay sane with the Chiefs. Yeah, we need that right now. Hit the wrong one for a second there. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Go enjoy your Friday night. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you all later. Take care.